September 2024, a month of acceleration, a month of empowerment, and really moving into this next phase of our lives and of astrology, because we have the fated occurrences, the emergences that come, the things that are removed as a result of eclipse season. September 2024 brings us into the second eclipse season of the year. We get Pluto's final stint in Capricorn to kick off the month. We get Mars entering Cancer, extremely important transit as Mars digs up things that are going to be highly important over the next period. We get that first eclipse in Pisces to shake up the mutable axis even more than it's been shaken up. And then we get Venus and Jupiter, lovely trine, before the month ends with this fall into the preparation for the solar eclipse in Libra, the final one in October. So strap in, stay tuned. We're going to talk about September's astrology, a month of real forward movement. It's exciting. So I am astrologer S.J. Anderson. Join me for the depth of the breakdown of the energies of the month ahead. We're going to examine it all, try to set you up and empower you so you can get out ahead of September, maybe ride these energies, ride the waves as they're emerging. Pluto back in Capricorn. Let's get that out of the way here, right out of the gate. It's the first of the month. Pluto re-enters Capricorn for the final time. Pluto in Capricorn until 2254. Long-term cycle, Pluto. And that's why we consider Pluto and other outer planets more generational energies that affect us in a different way than the 7 traditional planets, because they take such a long time to move through a sector that it's really feeling into energies that are often background tonality, or I like to think about it, setting the color or the music of the space. That's what we're going to get here, this final process of Pluto in Capricorn setting the tonality or the energy of the space. And so it's a great time because of this to appreciate in September this longer term cycle. Sometimes with Pluto or Neptune or these other planets, it's really as they get finished with a house, a whole sign house, in the case of the house system that I use, where we have the perspective now to look back and say, well, how did that actually change that area? You know, so look where Capricorn is in your chart, what sector Capricorn comprises, because this will be a great month, September, October, and into November, to process the deep transformative power that Pluto has injected into that sector. And that would be the main theme, the final moments of reflection, the real opportunity to reflect, giving gratitude for the transformations, and then moving in and preparing for Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. So it's approximately an 11-week period. Pluto will enter Capricorn on 1 September, and then it re-enters Aquarius for good, the final time, 19 November 2024. So that period is the period we're looking at for this final reflective Pluto and Capricorn moment. It's the culmination as well, this final period, so it's the chance to put the finishing touches on what Pluto has done there. The cardinal Earth sign, it's been initiating in Capricorn since 2008. Just off the top of my head, I think about the Russia war with the West. That's all started in 2008, or one starting date could be pinned to 2008. It was those Chinese Olympics, if you remember, those Summer Olympics in Beijing, when there was this disputed event around whether the Georgians snuck attack South Ossetia and Russia responded, or of course in the Western media, you hear these ideas that Russia invaded Georgia. Without getting into the nuances of that one way or the other, that's really when we had a kickoff of this idea of the big bad evil Russia that is the kind of renewed enemy of the collective West. It kind of replaced the war on terror and that enemy for the Western Empire. And so here we are, right at the end of Pluto and Capricorn, and this notion of Russia as enemy is as heightened as it's ever been. Maybe Pluto leaving Capricorn is a signal that some of that may soften. I don't know. We hope, and I want it to. Just delineating the symbols, the deep structural changes around government and corporations and other power structures of the society. Capricorn, a sign of materiality, an earth sign. Pluto's been transforming that stuff. We've had banking bailouts. The one thing I think of maybe is most accurate with Pluto and Capricorn is that when Pluto came to Capricorn, it was a result of that in 2008 that the Federal Reserve in America started doing what's called quantitative easing. It invented a new way to flood the system with money, to bail out the banks and to set up a new kind of monetary structure that was transformed. Again, Pluto and Capricorn transforming the material structure. So I'm looking for all kinds of banking stuff. I know I talked about that in my recent video, the one I just released. Scrutiny of leadership, transformation of power structure. Maybe there will be more, scandals. I always think of the Epstein scandals as Pluto and Capricorn because of how deep it was, and the notion of it transforming those structures of power. Capricorn's a sign of sensuality. Pan, right, is associated with Capricorn, the sea goat. Pan, the Greek god that is running around, basically this horny Greek god. We had the Jimmy Savile scandals in Britain. So there's been this sex scandal side of Pluto and Capricorn. We'll see how much of that reemerges here. You know, it's the election time in the United States. We've got to keep that on our radar here in September. Pluto back into Capricorn. Pluto will be in Capricorn during the US presidential election. So looking for things like big changes or events, especially with an eclipse season happening also in September. I'm looking for all kinds of accelerative curveballs. We have this thing called the October surprise in the American electoral process, which is that there's these curveball events. We have eclipse season in October. So because Pluto's back into Capricorn, you just wonder how much surprising, you know, news or transformational energies, Plutonic, might be also part of the agenda here in September. Real quick on that, you know, the election obviously is a major focus. Kamala Harris, in my view, because of her Saturn in Aquarius, one of the final dispositors in her chart, and we have AA time, she's basically an Aquarian figure, given how powerful the Aquarius sector is in her nativity. But that Saturn in Aquarius in her chart is exactly opposite Donald Trump's ascendant in Mars. So if there ever was a candidate that was going to block Trump or overcome Trump with this power of the Aquarian, it's Harris. And of course, Pluto is back in Aquarius during the inauguration. So I'm just watching for that. Again, these stories of Kamala and this kind of Aquarian age that Pluto is signaling to us and how she might be that Aquarian queen type leader. Let me just say this here. When I say this, I'm delineating a chart and some of the astrological energies. If I ever am going to share with you my political beliefs, I'm going to say these are my political beliefs, and I'll be abundantly clear about this is my personal belief set. I very, very rarely do that on my astrology videos because I want to center astrology here. This is an astrology channel. I'm not a political commentator. This isn't some kind of, you know, talk show around politics where astrology is just something we throw in when we want to. Virgo-Pisces, that axis, the opposition between Virgo and Pisces. Get ready for everybody to be talking about this often now, because we have an eclipse cycle that begins this month, September 2024, in Virgo-Pisces, and this month in September 2024, we have all these other accentuations with the Virgo-Pisces axis. Remember in August, we had Venus opposite Saturn in that same axis, so we've been dealing with some of these energies already. But here as we go full in, here we dive fully into this. And we're going to be talking about a lot. Tons of us astrologers. In this video, I want to try to give at least a bit of an introduction to these themes, because they're themes that are going to be around continually. You know, what is it? What is Virgo? Well, it's practical is a key word. Some people say service. I think about it as simply the meticulous observation, facility of things like the body and the earth and the resource. We're observing things of the physical realm in order to improve, right? And to bring us into betterment. This is what Virgo is. The studiousness and the detail orientation and the mental facility of Mercury is brought to bear on the earth, the things around us. That has to then oppose this kind of boundary dissolving component of Pisces, which maybe is less embodied, more ethereal, more about non-embodied states. That is to say, the feeling set, which can be disembodied, whereas Virgo is about literally the tangible material expression. Pisces is about these kind of leaps of insight or traveling in a more ethereal way or a disembodied way. So there's that tension of the opposition. That will become a major theme, is having some kind of inspired, maybe non-expressible way of approaching reality, juxtaposed with this very meticulous mapping or listing or observing. Like the scientist is Virgo. It's quintessential because you're observing nature. I think botanical sciences or sciences of the earth, geosciences, things like this. And so that's the core tension. You know, if you are feeling lost and maybe in more of a dream realm, you might want to try to re-embody. And if you're too much focused on the material as it's shifting, remember they're both mutable signs, so these are shifting states. If you're too much focused on what's happening, like your ledgers and your budgets, you might need to get into more of the dream and vision work of Pisces, but that's the dance. That's the dance we're in. So this month is a great accentuation of that. The new moon in Virgo on the 3rd September kicks it off with 2 syzygies this month in this axis. That Virgo new moon is tough. It's not, you know, the easiest chart because it's within a 5-degree or so range opposite Saturn and Pisces. So we've triggered what I've just been speaking about exactly with this new moon. You've got Mars still in Gemini. You've got Jupiter in Gemini. So that T-square energy is still built into this chart. It's still that tension of the change that we've been dealing with in August, and this is kind of that final moment of tension. The good news here is that Mercury's direct and Venus is in Libra, so there's a lot of strength with the exaltation lord of Pisces and the domicile and exaltation lord of Virgo. Those are very strong. So, you know, whatever lingering tension from that August T-square, The reason why I think this chart is better is that we're moving into solution now. Strong Venus, Mercury direct. It's a solution-oriented approach to probably some still problems, but it's okay because a lot of this is now in forward movement. So the Sun will oppose Saturn 8 September, still with this theme. Virgo, Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, planets moving through Virgo and opposing. The idea of where is the responsibility, where is the pressure that's coming from this extended dream that's hard to wake up from. Mercury enters Virgo on the 9th of September, and that to me is a real signal, that's a real positive turn here on the 9th, because Mercury, ruler of Virgo, now in Virgo. It can really bring some clarity, I think, to the month. When we get Mercury back in Virgo, it's going to provide great aid in maneuvering all of the shifts that are happening in September, the eclipses, all of it. We get this power Mercury. Check your Virgo sector. What is it doing? Where's your natal Virgo? You're brought into some empowerment around those themes here. My favorite metaphor is studying the dust. I love that phrase, but the dust is something that gets kicked up when there's tension, right? The T-square, this mutable T-square we've been dealing with, this ongoing process. As that gets kicked up, we are tasked with studying the dust. And we can get information then, you see, when you study the dust. You can map the change as it's happened or recently happened, using your Mercury powers to delineate, another key word for Mercury, mapping, contouring. Mercury is observing the details and listing it to process and understand what's going on. So you're going to be able to study the dust here right as Mercury comes into Virgo, maybe more so than you've been able to. You know, thinking about some symbols that are very Mercurial and Virgoan, and we just go to the Tarot, you think about the magician, right? Calling down from the earth and saying, I'm going to bring that earth into this specific form of these elements. That's the Mercury energy, that's the magician. We have the Virgoan energy with the card, the Hermit, and it's another card of magic and studying. You can see he's walking through fields of wheat with a lantern, and he's again illuminating some particularity, studying that Hermit is, and he's gone into a rumination or a study. And so that's a main theme of the month, magically studying to understand what has emerged materially as we've been in this kick up or dust up period. Saturn opposing Mercury, right? The classic battle between wanting to think and articulate and between then having that not be as easy as we want it to, the challenge, the labor that it takes to fully articulate something and to fully map or understand something. And then not only that, but Saturn and Pisces, it's the laborious unmappable. So you're trying to map the unmappable. That's a whole theme of the next year, year and a half. It's very difficult for us astrologers, you know, it's such a dynamic time. And we've got eclipses in Virgo and Pisces with Saturn and Pisces trying to map the unmappable. So you may be feeling some of that, but Mercury and Virgo will do a lot of good for you here to make some headway in that mapping process. Right here on the 9th of September as Mercury enters Virgo. And then the other thing about Mercury while it's in Virgo is the sextile to Mars. So Mars in Cancer now, talk about that in a second, but Mercury and Mars are going to have this little flow of support here right mid-month. I think it's a good way to kick off both the Mars and Cancer transit and this Mercury and Virgo transit. Mars may aid, you know, the deployment of our force with the nurturing facility. That might help us map or give us a domain of topics to then be mapping and thinking about. Virgo and Cancer are great friends, and so Mars and Mercury also can be friends in this way. That sextile perfects on the 12th of September, so just days after Mercury enters on the 9th. And that's the same day on the 12th. Mercury will be technically under the sun's beams, though it will be in its chariot. It's ancient astrological chariot by virtue of it being in Virgo, the sign of its domicile and exaltation. We might not be as worried about Mercury losing visibility right here on the 12th, right mid-month. And so now we come to this lunar eclipse in Pisces, the first eclipse in the Pisces sector, the first eclipse in Pisces of 3 total eclipses. They'll all be lunar eclipses, and they all hit at the end of the summer of their respective years, 2024, 2025, 2026. So just get ready. Every late summer we'll have this Piscean shift and alteration. The first 2 of them have Saturn co-present with the eclipsed moon, including this one. And embedded in this chart and on the same day, so the eclipse is precisely 18 September 2024 at 2:34 UTC. On 18 September, just a few hours later at 8:50 you have Mercury perfecting its opposition to Saturn. And so embedded right into this eclipse chart, again, is the Virgo-Pisces oppositions. You have the power Mercury digging in deep and analyzing, studying the dust, opposing that Saturn in Pisces energetic. And again, it's a T-square moment because the mutable axis is full of planets. You have Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, 5 of the 7 traditional planets, again in mutable signs. Not Mars though, so that's why this might be a little bit easier. And it's a major introduction here in September to the mutable eclipse cycle, a major deepening into the mutable nature of the times. Everybody feels that change is in the air. You know, we kicked off COVID at the beginning of this decade, and now we're into this new world. The wars, the technological advancements, so there's massive mutability in our times. This lunar eclipse only deepens that, kicks it into more unknown, more a sense of shifting and not knowing quite what world we're in because we're in between two places and spaces. You know, this practical, detail-oriented Virgoan and this kind of broader, more idealistic, less defined Piscean, and how we navigate with those energies both being present. And I think about it here, the pilgrimage without a map, because the pilgrimage is both Piscean when you have the spiritual urges and the emotional connectivity, the desire for the divine, the reaching out to divinity. That Piscean energy combined with the Virgoan spirituality, which is also part of the pilgrimage energy, where you have the desire for practicing a mystical or magical path. That's Mercury and Virgo. And so both of these signs are of the spiritual in a way. I think that we might know our prayers, one way to look at this moment. I mean, I've got my mala beads, I know my prayers, I know what I like to say. So that's my Mercury and Virgo. But at the same time, it's one step at a time. Literally, we don't know what's unfolding one day to the next. I turn on the news and it's crisis news one day to the next. It's technological breakthrough news one day to the next. I don't think we collectively quite know where we're going. There's a lot of potential for what's going to happen in 2025 and 2026, and it's not clear which way it's going to break. And so being on a pilgrimage without a end destination, without knowing where we're going, except we know we're going to keep our practices robust, Mercury and Virgo, and we're going to let our heart call us into that future, you know, reaching for the divine with that heart energy. To me, that defines this eclipse cycle, at least part of it. You know, we're struggling for form and structure, Saturn and Pisces, Neptune and Pisces with Saturn. This eclipse could be revelation and breakthrough around that spiritual search and that struggle spiritually. I mean, anything in Pisces, especially Saturn there, and then eclipse intensification is a call for intuitive, spiritual, emotional knowing, non-logical forms of knowing. This eclipse may come to rearrange that model of being for us. It's gonna maybe let go of certain things we know and teach us how to know without having to use the intellect, at least as a big chunk of the moment. Of course, the Virgoan with Mercury is gonna say, well, here's how you can use the details, but then we've got to release those details and release them into the Saturnine, you know, dissipation within that Pisces sector. Connection to the collective unconscious, a connection to the divine oneness of all beings, the kind of global entity that we are incarnated into, that we can feel. I mean, this is Rupert Sheldrake ideas, that we have this unconscious collective that we tap into, Jungian ideas of the collective unconscious. I think that's all very Piscean. I think there may be fears that come up. I can see this as being a dark night of the soul energy where there's crises, emotional and spiritual crises that we're pulled into, but for a reason, to wake us up. So often the divine love can only seep in and flood us when we're in that moment of crisis, and we have to release and let go in true, honest surrender. Saturn and Pisces, eclipse in Pisces, it's tough symbols to have eclipses angular to Saturn, and I would be quick to call out to God and reach out and release and surrender and say, please help me, I don't know the way. Perfect way to handle Piscean energy. I just don't know the way. Show me, please, help someone. I think we're gonna need this kind of supplication and releasing into the sea of the collective oneness and trusting that there is divine love, that it actually does exist. I love, on the one hand, that there's cycles of eclipses through Pisces over the year 2025 and then 2026, because we need spiritual rejuvenation. These times that are coming are gonna require a spiritual awakening in our individual lives and collectively. What is good about this chart? Venus is the exaltation lord of Pisces in Libra. We might be able to rely on the structured offerings of beauty. So maybe like a ritualistic, spiritualized moment, tea ceremonies, art galleries where you can examine a work of art that's hung deliberately in a way and in an arrangement with other pieces to evoke meaning. That might be part of our ritual. Even in our homes, how are we structuring the beauty in the home environment? Rules-based divine creation. It's that Libra-Pisces aversion, but when you combine them, it's like getting into the nitty-gritty of how we want to set things up, and then that becoming a container for the Piscean release. Venus and Libra can do a lot of heavy lifting in this chart. And traditional prayers. I mean, Libra is a sign ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces. We might want to think about traditional prayer states or older methods that we can rely on to maybe a divine mother or a divine, more feminine energy. I say that because Pisces is a feminine sign, and there's a lot of femininity in that. But whatever you want to connect to, whatever ancient prayers, I think that could be a way in to use that power of Venus and Libra. Themes of this eclipse moment, 18 September, right here mid-month. And I want to throw in one other note here. There was an article recently published, Richard Whittington, Ancient Babylon Tablets Are Finally Deciphered. And this is from artnet.com. And he talks about how lunar eclipses were one of the most closely watched astrological events by the astrologers who advised Babylonian kings. And there's been 4 texts that were recently translated. Andrew George, a professor at the University of London, Junko Taniguchi, an independent researcher, have translated some of these texts. They come from modern-day Iraq. Here's what the article says. Omens arising from lunar eclipses were of great importance for good statecraft and well-counseled government, the authors wrote in their paper recently published in the Journal of Cuneiform Studies. In later periods, there's ample evidence to show that astrological observation was part of an elaborate method of protecting the king and regulating his behavior in conformity with the wishes of the gods. So I wonder how much this lunar eclipse, of course, coming during an election cycle and with a lot of instability with the leadership of the world governments, as we're collectively in these multiple crises, I do think mundane astrology is major in focus here in September to see how changes happen. I mean, this summer was wild with the events that happened around Trump and Joe Biden stepped down. I mean, I think we may get more of this stuff here in September, October, and to the election. And it's not just the USA. I mean, we've got stuff going on all over the world. So watch your mundane astrology, watch statecraft, government, and how those things are going to be altered here mid-month, 18 September, with that lunar eclipse in Pisces. Mars in Cancer is going to be there for a long, long time. I'm calling it Mars in Cancer and the long renewal. Maybe the most important transit of the month, or as important as anything we've talked about, is Mars entering Cancer on the 4th of September. It will be there until 4 November when it leaves, but then it stations retrograde in early Leo and then is back in Cancer in January until the 18th of April. And so that's why it's so important that whatever happens here with Mars in Cancer in September, October, and early November, we go back over and we get a second bite out of the apple and we have to redo and reconfigure and then move ahead. You got to pay attention here to your Cancer sector, what's happening right upon Mars's entry and what gets triggered, because the whole of those stories may arrive here very soon in September. I mean, that's a major theme of this month. I'm likening it to a high pressure water tool where you use the water to like clean a sidewalk. And that's using the force of Mars in the water sign Cancer to make the home around us better. You know, the force of action in the home to clean and renew. You know, that's what this transit may be about. We're cleaning out our home, cleaning out the metaphorical sidewalks of our lives, cleaning out the spaces and places that we inhabit, both outer and literal, but also internally, finding a home anew and having to clear and clean and cleanse. And it's not going to be easy, likely. I mean, it'll be delayed and blocked, so there could be frustration. Mars in Cancer, downside is triggering frustrations and having angry outbursts. You really may want to watch that over the next 9 months, especially politically. We know how hard that can be when we watch the news and we're just triggered and angry. How can this be happening on planet Earth, my home? Why is evil doing this in our lives? And so we might be wanting to treat ourselves knowing that Mars is in Cancer and there could be these flashes of anger, emotional responses out of a sense of wanting to protect who we love and what we love. De-stressing, I think, becomes a major theme, trying to not have stress reactions, or when they emerge, how do you ring those off? Remember, Jupiter in Gemini averse to Mars in Cancer the whole of the transit. That's 12th from Mars. in Cancer, Jupiter in Gemini. There might be a need to retreat into like a book, just pull back and get our minds focused on some information as a way to watch those emotional triggers and responses. You know, I think the retrograde means we're not going to get out as easily as we hoped for. Everything that gets triggered in September, October, and then in November, we're not getting out of that right away. And it can be great. It's the great thing about a Mars retrograde is that when it stations direct and we're renewed, we get whole new ways forward in our lives. And so I do think Mars retrogrades are some of the most powerful transits for specifically when Mars goes direct. There's nothing like a Mars retrograde renewal. And that will station direct in Cancer on 24 February. So we're preparing for a bursting forward of some new life and new energy. A plant coming out of that earth having been watered and nurtured, ready for some new life. A chrysalis, you might say, a caterpillar bursting into the new life of the butterfly. That's what this could be likened to, but we're at that early chrysalis creation phase here in September. Could stir up unresolved issues. We're having to look around and say, I'm carrying all this baggage from my family. Cancer is family. My history, Cancer can be history or memory or the encasements we've emerged from. So look for that stirring up of unresolved issues that we're going to have to process or manage and get cleared with the long Mars retrograde in Leo, Cancer. Identity and then home. Those are two signs, the luminary ruled Leo and Cancer, of the self. The self will be renewed. Major theme kicks off here for September as Mars enters Cancer, right here, September 2024. Mars will trine Saturn 3 times during its run through Cancer, and we get the first of those trines right at the end of the month on 30 September. At 14 degrees, Mars trine Saturn. Could be a little bit jarring. Maybe we're jarred out of complacency a little bit. And you have a trine of malefics. We're seeing how the problems can be a gateway into the solution. The necessity to rejuvenate the spiritual and take it more seriously and act in the home to create spaces for spiritual depth. Pisces, Cancer, Mars, Saturn. Goes back to what I was talking about earlier, that there could be some darker confrontations with some serious energies that pull us in to deploying the heart and the deep capacity we have as humans to love and to love well and to connect to the divine truth of our reality. Malefics do that. They force the depth, and that's their power. We become more empathetic and more real, and even getting real about your dreams and hopes. I mean, Mars in Cancer can be about making those things happen and making the steps that you want to take compatible with your current home world or your current structure that's been built around you. Saturn in Pisces is the fantastical and then maybe the surreal dream you have. Well, Mars there trining Saturn 3 times may help ground that stuff. Even just cleaning your space. I just did that today when I woke up before I recorded. I was like, my space wasn't quite comfortable and I just rearranged it. I took an hour and I felt great to clear the energy of the space. These are the kind of things I think we'll have opportunities for at a higher level here, even with Mars trining Saturn 3 times. First one here in September at the end of the month. And I love that Mars will be here trining Saturn, clearing the way for Jupiter to emerge in Cancer as Saturn enters Aries, and we have cardinal activation as a primary theme of 2025. This house clearing or house cleaning of Mars retrograde in Cancer, trining Saturn in Pisces, spiritual preparation, spiritual house cleaning, sets us up for the major initiations that are set to emerge next year, the newness that we will have thrust upon us. One interesting mundane connection is that in 77-78, Mars was retrograde in Leo and then back into Cancer. That was the last time that Mars retrograded between these two signs, 77 into 78. Jupiter was in Gemini for some of that and then into Cancer as well. So it's a great mirror of our time. And there was this peace agreement at Camp David, the Accords with Jimmy Carter, Israel, Anwar Sadat of Egypt, that resolved that region with these similar transits. I think it's a little bit of an optimistic echo in terms of the mundane, that maybe we'll get some resolution in the Middle East region by the time we come out next spring, as Mars leaves Cancer on 18 April. It just bodes well, I think, to have those resonances, both with Mars retrograde and the Jupiter cycle. And it's a good example. What if we're preparing for some kind of new deal or new agreement? That would be the cardinal energy next summer, but this is the prep work that's going to be required to ensure that those agreements are done and done well. We're all going to have a version of that in our personal lives. The prep work, the renewal to set up the new initiations or new agreements that we'll be making with ourselves or the people around us or within our lives. Power Venus Venus trine Jupiter. Venus in Libra will make this trine to Jupiter in Gemini. Always pay attention to the two benefics in their dance, because they'll conjoin, they'll make a sextile, they'll square, they'll trine, they'll oppose and then repeat. Trining with the benefics or conjoining or sextiling, these are some of the best energies we have symbolically in our astrological system. Venus trine Jupiter, especially such a powerful Venus that happens on 15 September, right mid-month, right before the eclipses and the lead up to the eclipse. The expansive, optimistic qualities of Jupiter, the truth, wisdom, justice, revelation of Jupiter, combined with that harmony of the relation and the beauty of the creativity with Venus. It's expanding beautification. I mean, just classically, just those significations, you want that. You're like, yeah, give me some of that. I want to expand my beauty. The saturation in beautiful things, and then the love for life and the soft things of life and the comforts and the hopes and the dreams for positive unfoldment in our future realities. These are all the kinds of things that get triggered. Venus trine Jupiter in Libra. Venus emphasizes the partnership and maybe more serious side of that, because beauty is a serious thing. Yes, it's fleeting. I can look outside and see the trees and they're so beautiful, but those trees were planted. There was probably some urban design that brought those trees into being. You know, these are the things that are important. If they're ever threatened, you might have to take steps to protect the trees. I know where I am, they paint the trunks white to ward off bugs. So there's a serious side to beauty to allow for its flourishment. That's all the Libran. And of course, Jupiter and Gemini, it's all about the communicative information sets that then flow, the expansion of ideas that we can use to accentuate Jupiter, hopefully not kneecap it, but hopefully add to the wisdom through a lot of data effectively. And so beneficial collaborations, maybe there's 2 or 3 people we can join together with to enhance beauty through renewed agreements in whatever we're working on. And this is the same day as the best election of the year. The video I just released included a detailed breakdown of that, but it's 15 September, the moon is there, so you have a grand air trine. I won't say much more about it, but look for that moment if you're trying to plan or initiate or do something special. One of the best elections we have left, the moon's still waxing right in that beautiful bigger moon before it's uncomfortably full. So I just love that day. Do as much as you can is my advice if you're trying to take action and maneuver with this astrology here for the remaining astrology of the year 2024. And I want to point out this, Venus in Libra becomes an outlet for the mutable T-square. We still have Jupiter in Gemini, Saturn in Pisces, the Sun in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo for a lot of this month. Venus in Libra then becomes this outlet for the T-square, and you always want to see what planets can make a useful aspect. Anytime you have hard aspects between planets, there may be a third or a fourth flowing and supporting one of those planets or more of those planets. And that's what we get with Venus in Libra. And so the Jupiter-Venus trine that I was just delineating, this is how we can release and release tension from this lingering mutable T-square. Yeah, find your beauty this month as a release. If you're a creator, get out, make some photographs. If you're a painter, get into your studio. If you're a musician, play a little bit. If you just want to enjoy those things, put them on and settle into some creative flow as a way to rest and de-stress, you know, frankly. Power of Venus, it means the arts. Means the relationships, your loved ones. Enjoy a date with your beloved. These kinds of things may provide outlets here in September. And we might just be bursting at the borders here again. I think it's a lot easier than August, but still you have a lot of Mercury, a power Mercury, a lot of thinking. You might have so much you're trying to organize information-wise that you're having to calm down and de-stress a little bit and focus on your bodily needs, Mars and Cancer, and then your needs for beauty to settle the soul, Venus in Libra. So this final thing about September I want to point out is how things take on a major shift at the end of the month. The last week or so, we get big vibe shifts. So I want to prepare you for that. If you're just going along, we get the Sun entering Libra on the 22nd of September, Venus entering Scorpio the next day on the 23rd of September. We lose the Venus power. Right as the Sun enters Libra, Venus exits and then becomes exiled in Scorpio. And then we finally get Mercury entering Libra on the 26th, which takes some power away from Mercury somewhat, though Mercury does like Libra quite a lot. But just know those shifts take place, and whatever has happened up until about the 22nd, 23rd in your September, get ready for a new ball game and a new level of intensification. And that's because upon the Sun entering Libra on the 22nd, we're now deeply into this Libra eclipse. I've been talking to some friends recently about how eclipses can arrive early. And my favorite standard is when the sun enters the sign where it will be eclipsed. We're basically in the eclipse moment. An example of that was last October when the sun was in Libra during the events in Palestine that triggered this war. The sun was in Libra, even though the moon had to wane to make that eclipse event on the 15th. We had 7 days before that, 8 days before that, this event that kicked off the war that's still ongoing. So look here in September, 22 September, the sun will come to Libra, and we're now deeply in whatever this final Libra eclipse is going to be. I'll break that down in my October video. But the rest of this month of September is like bracing and preparing and basically in eclipse stories. So what if the event arrives early like it did last year? We may be getting major upheavals here at the end of September that are those Libra eclipse stories. The Nodal activation is here all month. The sun will conjoin the south node on the 29th of September. Venus conjoins that same south node at the beginning of the month on the 3rd of September. Mars squares the lunar nodes on the 16th of September. So we pretty much have all month. Venus at the beginning, Mars in the middle, sun at the end, making hard aspects to the lunar nodes. It means this month is even more fated, being caught up in larger forces or more deeper, profound forces of fate. Things may get removed or added. I mean, this month, September, is as eclipsy as they come. October has an eclipse right at the beginning on the 2nd. So it's really September that is the bulk of eclipse season, even though it might take halfway through October to be fully done with it. And so we're back to this idea of the nodes in Aries-Libra. Those stories that we're in the middle of, now we get another jolt of them here in September. Maintaining our autonomy, maintaining our passions and desires and our sense of independence, Aries. And then having to bring that back into and filter that back through partnerships and relationships we've made. And that dance, how things may need to be renegotiated, partnerships, relationships may need to be transformed to allow for the room for us to thrive as independent people. Similarly, having to, sacrifice to support relationships by, tempering some of our independence. I mean, it's just that dance of self and other that's been a major component of eclipses since last year. Look for some of those stories to maybe conclude here as the final eclipse in Libra hits right at the beginning of October. There might be a sense of resolutory. Just a quick look at the Libra ingress. We can use this as a stand-in for the next 3 months or for the fall season. One thing I like about it is that Venus is still in Libra with the sun. So you get that power of Venus, new beginnings in relationship dynamics, initiating in relationships, new supportive structures around love and beauty and the arts and who we want to connect with. That could be a theme of the next 3 months. Kind of optimistic that maybe that Venus in Libra will protect us. So setting that aside, using that chart as a stand-in for the next 3 months, locally Venus does enter Scorpio on the 23rd of September, and this adds some real depth and intensity to the relational dynamics. I think whatever is happening with the Libra eclipse reconfigurations, having Venus in Scorpio does bring risks here of pain, of hurt, of going deep, feeling the pain, sharing the pain, being honest about where we're at and where we've come from in new ways. Honesty is the best policy. Emotional honesty sometimes is the best policy. And there's a time and place to go deep with people and to share the intimacy of who we are. And that time and place may emerge for some of us here during eclipse season with Venus and Scorpio ruling that solar eclipse. It's just part of the month. Challenges in relationships, especially by end of the month, difficult conversations, honest conversations, which can often lead to great things, even though they're not fun when we experience them sometimes. Sometimes it can be really cathartic. Okay, let me just be honest, and you just start being honest, and that just kicks off a whole new open flow between people. That's the upside of Venus and Scorpio. It's to get real with our relationships, which can include some wonderful things. All right, and then finally, Mercury enters Libra, 26th of September. All of the ability to talk about the relational changes, we get some of that here to go with the eclipse and Venus and Scorpio. This is one of the best features of that second eclipse chart, is having Mercury in Libra with the sun, the sign of its night triplicity, Mercury doing well in air signs. Get into details about everything that's changing with our relationships and be more articulate around those emergences. Mercury be under the beams by this time, so it's possible that there could be a little bit of mercurial blocks, even though at the end of the month, look though for that Mercury-Sun conjunction. We finished the month with the superior conjunction of Mercury with the Sun, 8 degrees Libra, right in the lead up to the eclipse. So if you're looking for early arrivals of your Libra eclipse story, that 30th moment might provide insight or breakthrough. Like, yeah, that's what this eclipse is about. That's what this whole cycle in Libra's been about. Okay, this is my insight. This is my way forward. I love that for us, that we get that conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, the Cazimi, right to finish out September. All right, wonderful. I hope you have a lovely September. This is S.J. Anderson. Thanks for being with me. I'm glad to talk about another month of astrology with you. What a gift to get to do it. Have some beauty this month. I know there's a lot happening, but that Venus-Jupiter trine on the 15th, I hope you get to enjoy that. Have some hope and some positivity in your world here in September. I wish that for you. Wish it for myself. I hope we all get to enjoy that little bit of sweetness that we get this month. A spoonful of sugar helps that medicine go down. That's our spoonful of sugar here in September. You can support me with a like, with a subscribe. Keep up to date with the videos as they come out. Just subscribe to the channel. You can go to my website, sjanderson144.com. Schedule readings with me there. I'll be reading to finish out this year. I think there's October, November, December slots still open. So you can do that. And yeah, talk soon. Peace. I hope to have another video out. Check out my shorts. I'm releasing about one a day, so you can always follow me there. YouTube Shorts. Just go to my page. There'll be a little section there where you can watch some shorts. Have a lovely month. Peace. Take care. Talk soon.